Hello and welcome to this little demonstration for Tattered Lace, Tint and Texture. This is a really lovely collection which focuses on a two-layer approach whereby we can cut out the die and we can emboss it as well, giving you lots and lots of beautiful detailing. Let's take a look at the dies included within this collection. We're going to start with the sunflower. So each one of these dies is broken down into a leafy section, a petal section, and then a central part of the floral as well. Now, of course, you can mix match these, you can cut away the inners, you can leave the inners in, whatever you like, but essentially what you're going to be able to achieve is a lovely sense of depth and dimension by using that embossing feature. Our next floral included is the peony. So again, beautiful leafy surround, your petals, and then the central part of the peony design. And if you start looking at the snippability of this die, you could expand the sections of these, perhaps cut away a couple of petals, use that as decoupage, maybe cut away a couple of the leaves and expand the bouquet design on these as well. Our third and final floral for this collection is the wild rose. Again, very pretty, following that same format of the leaves, the petals, and the central part of the floral. And of course, once again, with all that depth and dimension of that extra feature being the embossing as well. Now, if you're looking to think, right, okay, what kind of cards can I use these on? These are going to be so beautiful on anniversary cards, wedding cards, birthday cards, any kind of celebration card, really. And of course, if we're looking to what is on trend, white on white is a really big trend at the moment. And having that level of depth to the detailing really brings that design to the forefront. Also included within Tint and Texture is this gorgeous frame. So it might be this is your backdrop. This is what your florals are going to be framed by. Maybe you're going to use it as a frame, have a little verse, have a little sentiment to the section there. But again, you've got your matte layers. Again, cut in, cut out. Really style this die how you want it to be. Again, it features that embossing, so you can see that where the shadow comes down, you've got all of that extra detailing of the filigree, of the little florals included on here as well. But what's really interesting about this particular die is the snippability. Look at all the different shapes. Just from that one die, we can create. And I'm sure once you get this home, you're going to find even more ways of using this. Perhaps taking just the little filigree elements and creating little squares, maybe almost like little monogram crowns here either side, just flipping, reversing, changing about the way these cut sections work to give you all these little elements and more. The filigree sections, almost like a little design here, very Baroque inspired pieces, Regency styled as well, very beautiful. All of these could be designs on your card front, all of these could be framing those florals in the collection as well. Even more. And I'm sure once you get this die set home and start cutting into it as well, you're going to find even more ways of using this with that immense amount of snippability as well. Next up, a little bit different. What about a faux embossed background paper using the centers of those florals? Again, I'll just tip it forward so you can see the embossing there, using it as a repeat pattern. Okay, so what we've done is cut out and embossed all of these little flowers and then stuck them on the white background to give that faux full embossed effect. And of course, that can be done on any scale, any size, and using any number of the die designs as well. So many ways of using these, so much to choose from. I love this. This is like a really wonderfully gorgeous Damascus background here. Gorgeous sort of swirls from that particular die set. Again, repeat patterning it. And again, important, if you're looking to have this as a card blank in your design, for example, have the die cuts coming over the edge. Trim the card down so it gives it that true kind of embossed feel. More papers, more designs, a little bit of ink on this one just to pull that colour through as well. And then when we start looking to our stash of what we could be using, what about your mirror cards? What about embossing into your golds, your silvers, even your black for something very elegant there? As we've discussed, this has a full embossing feature on these dies, so you can actually ink these in advance, pop it through and cut it as well. Then it's almost like a letterpress design there. And what about then using your embossing powders as well to really showcase that gorgeousness of the design. Now, of course, once you bring all those elements together, there's a whole host of different designs you could be making. Something like a little twist easel card, for example, using the inner as the stopper, utilising the frame, and again, the insides of the frame, mixing and matching with whites and silvers layered up. We've then got very beautiful sort of with the embossed background in the background there, highlighted again with that frame, adding a little bit of glitter. I mean, these little circles, the little centres of the flowers, the ends of the filigree are crying out for maybe some nouveau drops, maybe some glossy accents, maybe some sequins, maybe some pearls. Whatever it is, you decorate it your way. One final card to share with you. What about something like this? You've got that wonderful glitter in the background and then extending the frame by either cutting it and expanding it like so, and then having a little frame to the center as well. Okay, so you might be thinking, right, how do I use these dies? How does this concept work? Let me share with you my little tip for embossing and cutting. What I'd recommend, especially with your Pro Cut plates, is have one plate set up for always cutting. So you've got your 3mm on the bottom, your magnetic sheet, and then your 5mm on top. That is your cutting plate combination. But have next to it, ready to go, your embossing plate combination as well. So you've got your 3mm on the bottom, followed by the embossing mat, and then the 5mm will swap from your cutting plate over to your embossing plates as well. So let's go ahead and show you how these dies cut out. We're going to be using the wild rose for this demonstration. We're going to select the petals, the leaves, everything like that for this particular design, and we are going to ink this as well. So you get the full effect of this particular way of working with the Tattered Lace cut and embossed tint and texture designs. So here we're applying just a little bit of ink. So I'm using a Distress Oxide. It could be your favorite inks at home. It really doesn't matter. Anything that you have to hand in little circular motions onto the die directly. This is going to be quite subtle. I'm not going for something quite over the top here, just a little bit of detailing and inking that die up with circular motions of the inking brush, like so. As I say, we're aiming for delicate on this particular colour. Your die then goes onto your magnetic sheet facing upwards. We're then going to move on to colouring the petals and the centre. So I'm just going to get rid of that green off my mat with a little cloth and just wipe through on the cloth as well, just to bring my brush up a little bit more. And again, select some colours in sort of pinks and purples and what have you, just to create a little bit of detailing. So let's go for pink on the petals here. Again, just brushing that colour straight onto the die itself. Little circular motions all the way around. So I'm using just one colour on the petals there. You could add lowlights, you could add highlights, you can combine your ink colours on here, but just for the effect of this demonstration, we're going to keep it quite simple. Darker colour to the centre. Again, you could go in with yellows, you could go with oranges, you know, make this your own and in the colours you love working with. Central piece then goes on to the magnetic shim, like so. I'm just going to blot away that ink and we are ready to cut. So all of those dies then cut into our cardstock. I'm just using, I think it's 250, 300 GSM plain white cardstock, and into the machine it goes. So we're cutting out that initial layer first off. As that comes through the machine, you're going to see the ink transferring onto that white cardstock, and it's going to give you that detailing of the cut there as well. Let's just remove our 5mm plate, pop that off to one side, and then take away the excess, and you are left with the beautiful detailing. That ink is transferred over to the cut and even the leaves, like so. The next stage that we're going to be doing will be the embossing too. For your embossing, what we need to do is switch over to that embossing plate combination, taking both our dies and our cutouts with us as well. I'm not going to wipe off any of the ink from the dies at this stage or anything like that. It's all going to add to the texture of the design. So 3mm plate with the magnetic shim off to one side, bringing in the 3mm plate with the embossing mat on. We're then going to grab each one of the dies, and because you've got that lovely sort of ridge all the way around the edge of the dies, it makes it super easy just to position this back around onto the die itself. You can feel it kind of click into place. And this stage is how we're going to get that nice emboss feature to the design. We're going to be using the repositionable tape just to hold it in place as it goes through the machine. So you want to make sure it's nice and lined up and just stick to your die. And I tend to use 2 anchor points when I'm sticking, just so you don't have any risk of that coming out of position when it goes through. So the leaves are going to go underneath the embossing mat onto that 3mm plate facing upwards. Same thing with the other 2 layers. So we've got our petals here, just slotting that back into place onto the die. And again, taking our tape, repositionable tape, and making sure that's nice and lined up before we stick it in place again. So it's this extra little step, this way of creating that lovely deep emboss effect, which gives us extra dimension on these designs. One final piece, which is the center of the rose. And just taking our tape, probably top and bottom on this one, to hold that in place. Each one goes underneath our embossing mat. Just place the embossing mat back over and we bring in that 5mm plate that we've just been using to cut the designs out as well, and then back through the machine. And that plate combination ensures that you're not actually going to cut into that embossing mat, if you like. It's there just to give you that extra pressure to push those dies into the paper and give you that deep emboss feature that is going to be so well known for Tint and Texture Collection. Let's remove the top plate there and peel back our emboss. You can already see how deep that emboss is just on the back of the design there. Move our plates again off to one side and we just unstick and show you lovely depth and detailing on these designs. Be careful when we peel away the repositionable tape. It does get a little bit more sticky as it goes from through the machine, but not much. There's our base layer of our leaves. We're then going to move on to the petals with that lovely sort of pink colour that we've used, just like so. And then we have, of course, the finishing element here, which is the central part of that wild rose. And again, each one of those 3 die sets works in exactly the same way when it comes to cutting and embossing these. And there's your center. So it could be that you want to snip into these, create decoupage layers, add detailing, add height, whatever you like. But again, play around with the colors you like working with to create your designs from the Tattered Lace Tint and Texture Collection. Of course, these could go and adorn the front of a card, maybe into a shadow box, maybe cut them a couple of times and create a whole wreath from these designs too. But very, very pretty. And I'm sure you agree, something really exciting to work with as well. Now let's go ahead and make that design into a full card sample as well. So I'm going to move my little green and pink one off to one side. I'm going to bring in the sunflower, this time around in sunflower colours, and we're going to build this into a full card. So we've got mats and layers, we've got some of the backgrounds, we've even introduced a little bit of the frame there as well. So first things first, we want it a side fold, do we want it a top fold card? I think side fold for this particular demonstration. And then we're going to go in and just add in our mats and layers here. So sort of playing around with the colour scheme of the sunflower. We're introducing a little bit of the orange Craftmaster cardstock here, but also then framing that with a black mat and layer as well. So just taking my pokey tool and just selecting a little bit of the carrier sheet on the background of the tape to make it easy to pull and then just stick into place. Again, rotating that card around, just going in with the pokey tool to lift a little corner of the finger lift tape, carrier sheet, and stick that into place too. Again, if you're looking for inspiration when it comes to colour palettes and what have you, always look to the flowers that you're using, the elements you're using, and thinking, okay, well, I've inked this particular sunflower with a lovely bright orange centre. Let's replicate that. Let's continue that wonderful colour scheme, that colour design through the overall card look and create our mats and layers with a little pop of that colour as well. Same as what we've done before, just taking away the carrier sheet of the tape using our pokey tool and smoothing it down into place so it all sits together. Now that's quite an expansive colour, so again we can knock that back a bit using another matte layer of the black, a lovely framing device this, mixing and matching the widths, if you like, as well, of the mats and layers there. If you were crafting at home, you might want to be ultra conservative with your cardstock. Take one of your fundamental dies and what we call gut the middle of the cardstock there as well for use in another project, because ultimately you're going to be covering it with another matte layer. You're not going to see that bit. For the actual main part of the card, we're going to finish with another layer of the same sort of colour cream that we've got working in the background there. And this particular layer, I'm going to go ahead and stick with some of our Pinflair bookbinding glues, just a little bit of glue all around the edges there to stick that final matte layer into place. It just slots in like so, just squeezing it over a little bit, making sure we've got nice even mats and layers around the whole card itself. To the centre of the design, you want to kind of draw the focus in. So here we're taking one of the larger size surround dies from that frame itself to create a little topper, a little space into which we can start decorating around with the flowers. We're lifting that on a 5mm foam, just because you want a little pointer difference, because we're using that same colour, you want a pointer difference between those layers. And again, making sure we're using the grid lines on the mat there to try and get that as centrally as possible, like so. From here, what we want to do is introduce that step with the leaves, with the flowers. Again, as I said, we're using that sunflower design. It's already been inked, just as you've seen us create a minute ago with the wild rose. Same process, different colours with that different dye, which of course is the sunflower. I'm going to stick that just off centre of the design, having it leading in, so kind of like building a little base around the side here. Layers come in next. Again, same little process that we've just done, this time around with that yellow ink and the sunflower. We're going to raise that from the layer before with a little bit of Pinflair glue gel and just nestle that in so the petals sit within that little space created by the leaves. We can expand the look of the petals by cutting another section of petals, smaller amount of Pinflair on the back of this time, and then just snipping that in until that snipped edge is hidden behind the main floral there. See how expanding that floral out. Same thing with the other side, a little bit of Pinflair and just slotting that in to hide that edge as well. So giving a little bit more of a full flower look. Same thing can be achieved, of course, with the petals. So creating an inked background, an inked press with the leaves and then going ahead and snipping into them. It doesn't have to be neat. Remember, you're hiding all that little edge that you've cut away underneath the layers that you're placing down like so to give you that fuller effect to the leaves. It's a lovely way of building up the design here. Again, just finding those little areas into which you can slot extra leaves, lifting where needed, and just tucking those in. Let's finish with just one more leaf so you can continue that curve up and around the overall design of the kind of topper there. Just nestle that leaf in. And again, we've got the centre part for this flower as well. Like so. You see how that orange now really brings in the colour of the matte layer that we're using there. Few finishing touches we have. Of course, these beautiful elements cut from the frame, embossed as well. These are going to sit around the design, just so we're filling that sort of blank space around the flower itself with a little embellishment. We're going to make sure we're going to just tap out any of the cutaway bits. And then think of positioning. Do we want this coming the other way? Where do we want this going? Just in there, like so. Once we've made our selection of where they want to stick, we're going to go in with a little bit of bookbinding just on the bottom. We're not going to stick the whole piece. You just want an anchor point and the rest to be left free from the card itself. If you're tucking in layers, I always recommend using a pokey tool just to get into those layers and push down on that glued section so it holds in place. And again, coming over the edge of your mats and layers does make the card feel very full. It looks like the card is kind of coming out of its realms and just coming towards you as well. Same thing again, just nestling those little points in, like so. Larger one on the other side. Just mirror and balance the overall feel of the design. Making sure we're not coming over the bottom edge of the card itself, but just enough over the mats and layers to give you that effect. And then a little bit of glue on the reverse. Like so. And that's to finish our little design. It might be that you want to stamp a little sentiment on here, add a little die cut sentiment, whatever it is to make the card personal and unique to you. But there we have one finished card featuring the sunflower and a little bit of the frame from the Tattered Lace Tint and Texture Collection. I think you agree, you might find different ways of using that. Maybe the full frame in the background would look really fun. Maybe using that frame as an aperture and have the flowers around that as well. But again, lots of different ways of using that. And of course, really make the use of that wonderful cut and emboss effect from the Tattered Lace Tint and Texture Collection as well. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I shall see you very soon.
If you would like to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications on all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.